Okay.
And then you just go.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is John Graddick, and here we are this afternoon talking to Masoud Abda on pandemic risk management and realistic ERM. So we're going to be having a session that will probably last about 35 minutes of presentations from Masoud, and then we'll open it up to Q&A after that session is over. So if you see at the bottom of your screen, there should be a Q&A panel. So if you have any questions you would like to have answered or discussed, make sure that you use the Q&A function and not the chat function, please. So let me give you a bit of a background as to our presentation today by Masoud. Masoud is the president of SD3H Consulting and previously was an executive at Raymond Chabot Grant Thornton. Has over 25 years of diversified professional experience in finance and accounting. And he's a renowned expert in compliance issues, as well as an expert witness in court. He's a graduate of HEC Montreal. He's a member of CPA Canada, where he's actively involved in training and coaching CPA candidates for the common final examination. He is a fellow of the Institute of Canadian Bankers, as well as CFE member of the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners. So you can't pull too much by Masoud. He basically makes sure that we're all on the up and up. So as an expert in governance, he's also working in ethics and compliance and risk management, accounting, financial strategy. He's served with many large institutions in Canada and abroad. He's an advisor to governments, accounting firms, and international organizations and fiduciary practices, and is regularly invited by the media to comment on compliance issues. Mr. Abda is an instructor at several professional associations and is a lecturer at HEC Montreal and, more importantly, at McGill University.
That's good one. Okay.
Masoud, thank you very much for taking the time today to come and have a chat with us. Much appreciated. And I'll turn it over to you. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Jonathan, for this grateful and very flattering, observation of all my courses. I had the chance to do many things in my experience in my professional life. It's very, I've been very lucky to be able to do all these things through the years. But now it's, as you know, like with the McGill and other universities, it's time to share, always sharing the knowledge. So first of all, thanks for our attendees to be here and to attend. So we thought it was a good idea to share our knowledge or expertise about risk management, because we usually do that in classrooms or executive coaching or corporate mandates. But we decided let's go open to public, given the context, at least to give some heads up to our economic community. And if we can help, why not? I mean, knowledge. With knowledge comes the responsibility of sharing, and that's exactly what we're doing. And please, if you have any questions, any concerns, just use the chat box like John mentioned before. And again, we don't have the pretension. It's not like a 39 or 45 hours course or lecturing or I'd say expertise exposure. We just wanted to highlight some ideas, some toolbox, can take away so our community can use it to be more agile in this very severe and serious context, actually. Okay. So basically what we want to do, it's a 30 minutes. It's very short, but we'd like to give some broad light on the situation. As you know, we are actually in that pandemic context. So what we try to do is what is the minimum required to manage a business if you want to do some risk management, and again, allow me in the context of the economic context or business management, most of the entrepreneurs or small to medium size companies don't see themselves managing risk, but they usually naturally do. They don't have to be the corporate executive of that 3,000 employee companies to run the business or to run the risk. They usually instinctively do run their risk, but on a natural way, and it doesn't have a box in the diagram or the corporate structure. It's just something they do usually. So what we're trying to do is that when we talk about the risk management in any companies, in enterprise, mainly small to medium size, and to see what are the reality and how it's done, and what are the limitations. Because when you come to risk, you cannot manage all. At a certain moment, you have to admit certain limitation and certain constraints. And that's what exactly what we try to do, and to give you some ideas how you could successfully manage your risk with minimum costs, not meaning that there is no cost, but there will be, and to be able to survive, whether in this pandemic crisis or other ones, because we have seen many of these, okay? So mainly, we'll try to see what makes a pandemic, a crisis, because most of our community members seems to have been disturbed, surprised by this pandemic crisis. Well, if you go back and you try to document yourself, you will realize that unfortunately it did happen before. We were lucky not to be impacted, but the risk management techniques or practices just demonstrate that you cannot be lucky all the time. Maybe lucky 9 times out of 10, but maybe that 1 out of 10 will just knock you out. And that's what we don't want to our businesses. Just to be aware that there is tools, there is ways, simple, that they can use and adapt. They don't have to be the expert in that subject. Just they need to be aware that it does exist and we can manage it. We have tools, okay? And there is options. So basically, the World Health Organizations, even if it has been criticized a lot lately, they do have some very interesting definitions, okay? So it's just something on the, I would say, infectious side of the medical science, a new virus that most of the population doesn't have immunity for. It's not like it's like the flu, except that like it's more severe than the flu. That this one can more literally kill than the flu itself. But we have to learn how to manage it, and hopefully since a year now, at least a couple 10 to 12 months, we know how this COVID-19 SRAS, virus works. Okay, so a pandemic is like when we have a spread of a virus that most of the population doesn't have immunity for. Doesn't mean we won't build immunity for. The problem is like a human body just need to build the immunity. If something does not exist, our bodies do not build immunity for. So that way we need to have the virus first so we can fight it. So that's the pandemic definition of like it's a virus that spreads around the world and hits a lot of population and unfortunately do make a lot of casualties, okay? And it did happen before, okay? So the thing is just like, if we have short memory, it did happen before. And why are we aware or concerned about the pandemic, okay? Because it does disrupt a lot our society, our systems, okay? And the most, I would say, harmful part of any crisis or any pandemic crisis or any major risk event is if that risk event is able to force organization to extraordinary measures or to specific measures, like something have to go extreme. And if that extreme goes to the level where we have to stop the economy, that's what makes a crisis or risk event a pandemic level. I mean, like we are in a situation where, because of health issues that do not concern the corporation, but they do impact the corporation indirectly through its staff, through its people, through its employee, and where situations do oblige or constrain a government and companies to take extraordinary measures, meaning cutting maybe jobs, stopping the production chain, supply management, and governments will step in and then just like stop the whole economy because they don't want that virus to spread more and contaminate or harm more the economy. So that's like we call a pandemic crisis. It's because it has the ability to force to actions that we usually do not take, like cutting off jobs, stopping companies, closing stores, and so on. So mainly what we want to point out is the following, okay? We know that the pandemic is like something we cannot control. It's a health issue, okay? Now we look at the part where, why is it disruptive, okay? So because it's not something localized, it's something worldwide, it's spread. And in risk management, it's what matters always, can we control the risk or not? Can we go to damage control? In the case of pandemic situations or crisis, we have no control. The moment we hear it's a pandemic crisis or we have a pandemic issue, meaning there's a virus spreading and population has not built immunity yet, and some population unfortunately will die because of that lack of immunity, we have a problem. I mean, like, we lost control because it is something we did not expect, or we did expect but we don't have the means yet. We cannot build things for something that will come. So first thing is, like, we do not control it. We can use everything, everybody together. Let's say we can control it, but how long? We don't know. We still need to have that scientific approach, meaning that we need to build our knowledge to know how this cause, which is a virus, could be another one in 6 months, in 1 year, to get knowledge of that virus to be able to control the pandemic. But again, after that will become like a known situation till the next pandemic. So we don't know what it is, how long it will take, how much resources we will need, equipment, for example, just ventilators, just capital to help companies. So it forced us to take some actions that we usually do not take. Okay, like for example, opening hours, delivery measures, packaging, cleaning, and so on. And the businesses will have to innovate. For example, a 3M company will move from making Post-its to masks to face shields. It will force, for example, taxis companies or Uber to go from transporting people to transporting goods. So these are like, it will force these new way of doing business, or the pivoting, like we call them. And unfortunately also it is disruptive because, as we don't know, we have no choice but trying things, and we look disorganized. It's not because we're not disorganized, because we have no choice. We are situated at an unknown ground. So the best strategy is just to try things. We try the opening hours, we try the confinement of population, we try many things. So that's what is disruptive, because first of all, we have to remember, we do not control it. We don't know how long it's gonna take. If something's gonna take 15 minutes, but you don't know the 15 minutes. So minute one, you are totally panicking and use all your resources. But if you are, as you go and the crisis just like deepens, okay? So how do we do that? So you just don't know. It's like how long is it gonna last? Okay. Now, why we call it a crisis first, and why is it disruptive? So when you look at the number, you will realize it did really disrupt our economy. It did really do something. Okay, it did harm. Okay, so actually, when you see the numbers, it's scary. These are numbers like for April, May. Okay, when you know that like 1/3 of our labor force just applied for government help. We have reached like 13–15% of unemployment rate. We are looking at like around 5 million Canadians, maybe if the situation continued to be locked down and confined, that maybe file for bankruptcy. We have almost 1/4 of our, let's say, small businesses, forces, or companies that like they have no revenue yet these days. And many things, the whole economy is slowing down, if not stopping. If we look at the government side, they are spending, but like, again, how far or how much they can spend. So when you look at the numbers, like 300 billion for the federal level, 15 billion around for the provincial levels, times 9 provinces, you have the idea that it is severe, it is extreme, and that's why a pandemic is usually so disruptive. I mean, it is something we have not seen. It's usually something we're not prepared for, because we cannot prepare for everything. It's just like we need to be aware that we have limitations, okay? The other thing, as we are in a pandemic, in a crisis, it's been like more than a couple of months now, we will feel, everybody on the personal level, business level, we have to innovate by necessity, because we have to do things. We have to be able to manufacture products, to provide services. Not talking about the fact that governments will have the prerogative to decide or to, take some decisions and actions saying you are on the priority list, you're not on priority list, and then because we need people to manage all the flow. So actually, as we are in event from necessity, we have to understand that from now on, any disruptive situation or crisis, it has some components. The three ones that you see on the slide are the key ones. So actually, when you hear that you are actually a walking barcodes, I mean, meaning that individuals could be just digitalized. I mean, like you're a digital entity that we would like to serve. We have liquid people, meaning that as we have realized that people can no longer reach their point of connection with their work, they might think about doing other businesses, other work, other trade, even train for something different. So they're becoming a liquidity, meaning like the person that we used to work in the manufacturing industry may very well go to the insurance industry, may very well go to the transportation industry, okay? So from the transportation to the manufacturing industry, to the insurance industry, we see like how people will do that. People will learn to be liquid, to be different, to have, because the crisis has taught them that they can no longer rely on just one channel. So they have to go to something else. The businesses need to transform. Just imagine after the COVID-19, all the packaging technology that we will need just to avoid any other viruses to spread. We may also think about, do we have a cash preservation policy? Meaning like how much cash or capital we put aside just in case, like my grandfather or my grandmother used to do, put money aside just in cases. We have to think about infrastructures, okay? So do we need all of these infrastructures? Maybe yes, maybe no, okay? But likely if I want to survive in the next round of any crisis, I may have to lower my fixed cost. There would be a new digital supply chain support because if I need something, I cannot go to the store, so I would just use Amazon or use other providers to have that supply that I need. So literally any companies now would have to use some digital supply chain, support. That's exactly what's going to save them. We're still here. It's just like the venue of brick and mortar has a bit disappeared. Not talking about all these social behaviors that, for example, that these days people has realized that maybe they would be able to work from home. So once they have learned that and adapted to that, taking them back to, okay, now it's finished, confinement is done, you have to go back to work. I have many people, many colleagues that said, why would I go back to work? I mean, I can work from home. Why would you constrain me to go to the workplace, expose me to X, Y, Z? So it has become an issue. There has been a social shift. It's finished, it's done. So we have to adapt to that. All these environmental concerns now, all the aseptic practices that has been taken place that nobody wants to take away anymore. Many industries has been challenged, and maybe some of them just like go out of business. So the innovation has brought good and bad news. So we just have to embrace the good part. Now, when we talk about risk, it's like, I have been paying my fire insurance for my home since the last 30 years, and thanks God, no fire happened. Okay, it's just my neighbor next door, like last week, got his house all of it burned. Electrics, of course, circuit shock, and then house is gone. So I said, oh, I'm happy. Thanks God I have an insurance. He also has an insurance. Would you have thought that one day the fire will break? Never, because everything is fine till it happens. So unfortunately, in predicting the unpredictable, it's just we don't look at the right things. If we talk about pandemics, look at the dates. We are 2019, 2020. So it just like has been 5 years ago. And each 5 years, 5 to 10, we did have a pandemic. It's just, it didn't hit us locally, okay? We forgot about the ice storm. It's not really a pandemic, but we can compare it in the severeness of the impacts. We have the SARS in 2004. 6 years or 5 years later, we got the H1N1. And then 5 years later, we got the Ebola. And then 5 years later, we have COVID-19. So if we look thoroughly, it did happen, and it is happening maybe we don't know about certain small pandemics, but they are here. So I cannot say, you know what, pandemics happen once in a while, once in one hand. No, unfortunately, the last 20 years, the cycle was like each 5 years. So it is there. Talking about other crises that could be major. Everybody remembers the bank's data breach that happens these days. So I cannot say, I don't have to think about my data being taken from a bank. Well, it's known, it's there. So it's all about that, having that culture, meaning that I have to be aware that an adverse event may happen and may impact my business, whether I like it or not. I just have to be prepared for it, okay? So that's how we predict these events. Now, how do I predict and predictable again? Well, part of my business or my management, it could be very natural, very instinctive, entrepreneurial, you know, just as an entrepreneur. I just have to sit and at least once in a while or once in a year, or let's say just at least an annual basis, do the exercise, okay? What could have happened to my business that will stop it? But the first key is just I have to believe that it will happen. I don't know when, but it will, okay? And the key thing is, what are the critical resources I would need to be able to at least see it coming, manage it, and maybe survive it? So, and again, this is whether I have internal resources or I can go get help. There's organization, there's government entities, there's you know, statistic firms. There's a lot of things in the market, specifically these days on the web, that they can read and get knowledge from. Then after that, say, okay, I am a business, Mr. Wood. You know what? I'm a business. I cannot just think about that ERM, you know, framework you're talking about. Looks more scholar, more education, more high tech, you know, it's like it's just more financial markets. I don't have time for that. I'm just a regular business that do business. I want to know, what is this thing? How do I manage it? And what is the price to manage this thing? So I would just say, just budgeting. So just your budget. So in your budget, usually you would look at like how much cash preservation you can have. And that cash is not dormant. I mean, you can just set aside that cash and put it at work, invest it in a very secure investment financial instrument like deposits that will earn some interest. At least you will have that money. Is it 10% you will need? 20%, 30%? It depends on your business and your habits. How do you think? You just have to think how much your insurance will cost to allow you to access some capital. The second question is, like many people will ask, okay, my cash burn ratio is how much cash I can burn per month. I'd say, well, if you have money, you can burn the money, all the money you want. But the idea of the cash burn ratio, it's not to burn all the capital. It's to say, okay, I should be able to spend X amount for X months. After that, I do like the bears. I hibernate. I have to go down. I have to stop. If I am not in an industry where it's a priority, like in the food and beverage businesses or in some business that can survive in pandemic risk because the consumers has no choice but to use the services, I might just say, okay, it's time to hibernate because it's a nonsense. I don't have any consumers. Just staying open without revenue, it's not an A. So I would say, okay, once I will hit that level of revenue, I would just hibernate. I would just like stay stable. I would just like I would have reduced, but like I had to stop. The idea is not to burn all the capital you have. You have to decide after which trigger of revenues or sales or production, I will hibernate. I will just stop, just pay my fixed costs and that's it. But again, everybody has to participate, okay? The other thing, most of the issues these days for most of the question is the resources, people and capital. They have to be agile, meaning that you cannot just have an expert or someone specialized in everything. So you may think from now on, someone that can be able to do 3 tasks, 2 tasks, 4 tasks, depending on what the task is. So it will force you to think about multidisciplinary profiles, cross-training, having access to remote resources that are not on the premises, that are away, and think about any strategic partnerships that you may have with your peers or even competitors when there is a crisis. Okay. The next layer is, okay, Mr. Wood, we agree, there is a pandemic risk. We are aware, we have understood a bit of it, but who is responsible? Okay, who's who's going to take in charge? The problem with pandemic risk is just like, usually it is governments that are in charge, okay? And many things are really restricted. Movement of people, goods, everything is not under your control, okay? And of course, you don't have the expertise, and you're not supposed to have the expertise for that. You're supposed to have the understanding, the minimal understanding, what is the impacts of a pandemic on your businesses, okay? Because you're not in charge. Governments, public health, public health authorities are in charge. The economic system is shut down, so you're not in control. Now, just to be a bit like a more conceptual, so if I want to manage my risk, usually as a business, I want to protect my revenues. So usually what we do, we insure receivables and we get financing from the banks. But these days it has gone more than that. But even the banks, well, if you have no receivable, no revenues, there is no money that we can allow. There is some emergency measures that you can have access to. But again, they're not going to be sufficient. So our typical standard enterprise risk management is based on, okay, we need to protect the business. So priority is protecting the revenues and make sure we can at least pay some of our, liabilities or some like short-term, obligation to our suppliers. But it goes beyond that. We say, okay, let's say we are in a situation like this one. We do not have access to the company premises. Nobody can go to a physical place. So as you can see in the picture, you have goods, but nobody is able to go get them, and nobody is able to deliver them. So we're locked. I mean, we're just, okay, it's available. It's just nobody can deliver. Nobody can come and get them because everything is locked down. So this is what we do in a business resumption plan. So this is not the one we need, because we say this situation may have last 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, but not 3 months, 6 months. Think about perishable goods. Think about many things that are would not be suitable for this kind of situation. The second part, okay? As we are more digitalized and we have more IT, techie, iPad, iPhone, tablet, platforms, all these Google, Facebook things. So we have a digital society. So we usually think about the disaster recovery plan that usually, we think about our backbone, which is our IT structure. This is how we function, okay? That's what's needed these days. If you go somewhere and there's no computer, there's no link, there's no systems, it's literally impossible to work in our society these days. So for example, what do we do if there is a DOS cyber attack, meaning denial of service? Well, we know how to do that. We know how to have replication sites. We have some scripts to manage all these security issues, and we go back to normal through that disaster recovery plan. But not enough again, because it has begun more than that, farther than that. We think more about the continuity plan, okay? Most of the continuity plan, and please, you can go on the BDC website, which is a very good website, like for the small and medium enterprise. They have a very good checklist for the business continuity plan. But as you would see in their document or in their guide, most of the policies for the pandemic are to be determined. Why? Because all the industries are not alike. They don't have the same regulation. They don't have the same logic. They don't have the same parameters. They don't have the same population, meaning business-wise. So it's always to be determined. So each company, whatever the framework we have, you still need to determine these policies in case of pandemic, except the health issue one that are known and regulated, and you have no choice to obey by them. Otherwise, you'll be fined or closed. So this is very easy. But we're talking about the business side, the policies, like what do we do if there's a pandemic? All my team, I don't have to talk to them. At least, well, we can communicate, but they literally know what to do. They will stay home, use their computers, blah, blah. But this works for the service companies. But what do we do for the manufacturing companies? For most of the trades that are manual, that we need someone to take action. I mean, unless if we develop, I would say, a society of robots, it's going to be difficult to do that. So we have to think about it. So even under the business continuity plan, I will still have the same issue. resources and budget. Of course, if I have whatever money I need and whatever resources I need, I won't feel the crisis. I won't feel the pandemic. I'm fine. I'm the Amazon of this world. I just have to move goods for people. So whether there is a pandemic or non-pandemic, Amazon at the most they can ship everything all the time, even using the excessive capacity of the airline transporters, of the truck companies, and so on. So they did that, but it's not everybody's case. Okay, so we are faced by this limited budget and resources, which is not realistic. So what do we do? Again, we have to be very practical. So what do we do? There's, I'd say, 5 options. Okay, I could be a very small business. Say, listen, ladies and gentlemen, it is this is pandemic thing or this crisis. It has hit everybody worldwide. So you know what? I want to just don't do nothing. The government will provide bailout. The problem is the government has also limited resources. They won't prioritize everybody. They won't give money to every industry. They will have to make priorities. And if you're not in the list, well, you will receive no money. Okay, but it's your decision. Now, you would say, okay, let's say and go see that continuity plan. It is costly. It is something exceptional. You would be on an exceptional set. There is cost. And would you need it all the time? Maybe not, maybe each 5 years, each 10 years, but it will happen. You may say, okay, let's take the insurance for these kind of situations. So these days, there's a lot of challenges. Many companies and many law firms are preparing themselves to fight the insurers and to fight the whatever provider of protection is there in the market. Because what they're saying, oh, I have a force majeure clause. But when you read it, you will realize that like both the pandemics are already excluded. So we said, like, why do I have a force majeure thing? Well, we didn't think about pandemic because we may think, we believe that the force majeure or the pandemic is an act of God. Okay, so even these tools won't help because when you look at the fine prints, they are very disturbing. But again, we'll leave the court decide if the force majeure does apply for pandemic. I do believe so. We can say, okay, as we cannot insure things, we can decide for like certain industry to auto-insure myself. That capital caution put aside. Nobody can insure me in pandemic situations. So I would just put money aside, 10, 20, 30% of my capital, just in case something, I would just pay up. Instead of paying a premium, which is less cheaper to the insurer, I would just put capital aside because when will come time to trigger that insurance, I would have so hard time. And again, it's about regulation. The insurers do not do that in purpose. It's about the law, it's about regulations, but it's more complex than it is. So the 5th situation or option, okay, once I'd say you have succeeded to adapt, to survive or to manage your business within that crisis. My suggestion, or as many other professionals, please don't go back to your normal. Keep that pandemic crisis set up and try to adapt it like it will always be this way. I mean, there is some activities that you have to reopen, but reopen them in the mind that you kind of still in the same crisis. So the next pandemic, you just be ready for that. You have learned to work differently, okay? And the next pandemic won't hit you that hard because you are already working in pandemic crisis mode. So please, what I'm saying, don't go back to normal because the cost of transfer for the normal setup, regular business to the pandemic or crisis, setup or strategy is costly going in and out. So please just keep one set. So what is the best response strategy? Very simple. You have products or services. So when I use products here, I mean also services, okay? You still have your product. Don't forget, you still have it. I mean, you didn't lose your practice or your knowledge or what you are manufacturing. People still need that. It's just like within these days, they just come to the place to pick it up. So you still have the same products and services, but it's like you need to think about a different channel to get it to your people, to your consumer, to your thing. Strategy number 2, you have the same infrastructure. Your product is no longer needed, liked, whatever. You do like 3M. People are not really buying Post-its this day. but they do buy, you know, a lot of masks and face shields. Okay, so different products. So shift to that part, please. Okay, you pivot to that thing. Strategy number 3, you have the same products, but you say different infrastructure, meaning I used to have all my staff same place. I might think about having 3 groups of staffs, 5 groups, 6 groups, each group within a certain region, close to their community, close to certain venues, businesses, transport channels, logistics support, name it. Okay. For example, if I use a lot of data processors or data technology or a lot of IT infrastructure, I may have to think about being closer to someone providing these and just move close to him to profit from that thing. So we still have the same product, but I will change my infrastructure. So I have 3 choices, but they're not the only ones, but I think they're the best response for this situation. So John, I think I'm done. And we're to the
You're never done, Messer. You just keep going. It's great stuff. I think that
yeah, I think I'm
a lot of material in there. I think that people you've given people a chance to really try to get.
I think I'm missing my
everything.
yeah. Just if you allow me, I would just there was some sorry for that.
If you want to leave the screen share on, you can. If not, not to worry.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions for Masoud, just to basically make sure that you use the Q&A panel and answer, present those questions, and we'll slowly go through them. I think just to start off the question and answer period,
Yeah.
I got a couple of questions. I'll start off with one question.
Give me a second, John, because there was a summary that they built it. For whatever reason, it didn't. I think I went too fast.
Which one was that?
The summary one. So I'm just going to go back and whatever it didn't show, it was too fast, I believe.
You skipped one.
Yeah, I think.
Uh-oh.
Okay, do you see it?
Yep, I see it.
Okay. So sorry, ladies and gentlemen. So sorry for that. So just like I went too fast. So the last takeout for that is like as a business owner, business practitioner, we have to be realistic. So in any crisis, in a pandemic, you have to be ready to expect some monetary loss. That your business activity may have to change or disappear. You may have to face a new product or new demands. You have to innovate. But the thing is just that the key thing is to be ready for that thing. So if you are ready mentally, if you know that these things may happen more than they are expected, it is the key point, having that risk culture. If it happens, you have thought about it, you have rehearsed for it, so you are ready to do that. You're not like, disoriented, you're not disturbed. So, and the thing is that you need your people. You need the people that works with you, your partner. You have to be transparent. You have to build trust because it will strengthen your abilities. And being ready with these extreme measures, it helps a lot, okay? And when we are ready or we expect something, usually it's less harmful. It's like when you are playing a football game or any game with a ball, and then you are expected to be hit by a ball, so you're less surprised when you receive a ball in the face. So but I'm not saying that's what we want. But like that's the key thing in risk management. If you expect something, it's usually less harmful. You're ready for it. We have the response. The problem is not the crisis or the risk event, but how fast and how good you can respond to it. Okay. So that was sorry for that, John.
All right, well, thank you. I think that covers off. I think the summary is very, very appropriate given the fact that, we've got an audience that's got some very, very specific questions. And I'm going to start off with a few questions for the audience, and then I may throw in some of mine as well. So one of the questions we had was, after the pandemic is over, and we have to define what do we mean but when it's over. The question then becomes one of, do you go back to your original infrastructure?
That's the key question. For me, I wouldn't advise it. We have to reassess the need of that infrastructure. the thing it will force you, like we said in the couple of slides before, your infrastructure, you know, that let's go back to that. Remember that when we said, go to this, so it's people, it will have, you know, a visual memory. Okay. Same infrastructure or different infrastructure. So you have to reassess. Now, do you really need all this infrastructure? Okay. Because this infrastructure are fixed costs that you usually needed when you never been exposed to a pandemic, when everybody can reach their premises, their infrastructure, like for work or for service or for delivery, whatever. But now you have learned that it might not be possible. So you have to think, I am obliged, do I have to keep it as it is? Do I have to have remote places? You have to reassess your needs, because most of the thing is just like the staffing that need this infrastructure, the productions that needs to have. So you may think about having maybe remote infrastructures. You may have to think about maybe renting infrastructures. Do you really need them? Do you need them to produce a service or a product, or do you need them for staffing purposes? If it's for staffing purposes, my first advice, you need to cut that as much as you can. You don't need, for me, I mean, as a professional, you don't need people to be in a location to see if they're working or not. Okay, so if they can render their services, their work remotely, you will transfer your infrastructure cost to your IT or digital cost. I'm not saying it's going to be cheaper, but like at least you will have that infrastructure issues that going away. You will deal with more intangible or nor corporate, you know, just structures, if they are really intangible assets. So you'll move your infrastructure from physical to digital, which is more maybe lighter, more flexible. So my answer is like, I wouldn't say 100%, you may think. And even the regulators, the government are saying, well, I think they set the rate at like 30%, 40%, something, occupational rate for corporations, for infrastructures, my understanding.
Great, thank you very much. Another question is, you know, how long do you think this recovery plan is going to look like within a typical industry? Is it, you know, what is a typical time frame associated with a recovery plan? Okay,
so rule of thumb, what we say in the business or in the jargon, in the risk management, the longer pandemic stays, the longer recovery will be, because the impact delivered in 3 months is not the impact delivered in a negative way in 1 year. If a pandemic stays 6 months, we can say at least 1-to-1 rate. It's going to take another 6 months to at least see some. Okay, it's not that true, like when you see in the media, just switch on, switch off. Not true. Because I did get, the longer I stay in a situation, like I said, the more I get used to it, I adapt, because I'm a human being, you know, I'm just like, a living entity. So I adapt to situations, I develop reflexes, I develop way of thinking. And so I cannot just like after day one, okay, go back to work. And no, it's just like, I'm just like, oh, I used to go have a walk. I used to have more time with the family. I don't want to travel. I realized that, like, for example, in my case, I filled my tank with gas 3 months ago. So just imagine 3 months ago. So I realized that, maybe Mr. You can use less the car. So and I can. So I just, when I go back to, you know, all the time. So I have learned. So I said, interesting. So same way, the longer the pandemic stays, the longer the recovery will happen. It's not true that we can force this way, because I have learned things that I'm not letting down. I learned to use electronic delivery. I learned to have my grocery, my butcher, my baker deliver bread. So, okay, so there's a lot of things I have learned. So rule of thumb, 1-to-1, 3 months, it will take at least 3 months to get back to normal.
Okay.
Whatever normal we can define as normal. Yeah. So if it did took us like 4 months, I would say like September, November, maybe by the end of the year, we can see some recovery, because we have to put the money in the system. We have to get the system rolling. Everybody is reassessing its business. Like you said before, do we need this infrastructure? Do we need all these people? Do we need, because it's a capital constraint, it's a capital crunch issue.
Yeah, and I think, you know, my UPS driver and I have developed a pretty good relationship.
I know him now. He says, hi, how are you? How are you doing these days? Good.
Last couple of months. And I think Amazon is going to be pretty upset with me once I start moving off of Amazon back into in-person shopping. And these drivers are going to be wondering what happened to me.
The delivery guy, I know his name. He know his name. Hi,
Right.
sir, how are you? They say, hi, John, how are you? How are you doing? It's just like,
It's strange. I got one more question here, which is pretty interesting. And I find, this has always been an issue when you talk about the way in which management, senior management, basically needs to kind of focus in on recovery planning or BCP or BRP or whatever it is. Question is, how do you have any tips or advice on persuading companies to focus on long-term risk planning when they are sometimes hyper-focused on the short term?
Okay. So this is like, as a business owner, you can say, okay, so listen, whatever you say, I'm not interested, just to be honest. Bottom line, business, how much can I gain? How much can I lose if this happens? What we say, unfortunately, we have learned, we have seen that you cannot just like aim at short-term goals. You cannot just aim at profit and revenue. We have seen the financial market plummeting like hell. We have seen many things change. We have seen Hertz closing. We have seen JP Morgan having problems, Goldman Sachs, all these, let's say, financial institutions having issues with capital and return. So we have learned that the pandemic has more importance. Our lives, our society, our responsibility has more meaning than just like the bottom line. So unfortunately, I think that the corporate world now is faced with social resilience. They will know, I have known, and I know these days, professionally refusing jobs because they have to go somewhere, because they have to travel, they have to go to be in an office. So they're just saying, you know what, if I'm not working from home, if I'm not working from a remote area, I'm not coming to your site, for example. And businesses and corporations has been surprised, like, you turned down my offer? Yes. Because there is health issues, there is many things that has been discovered these days. So the short term, I would say, yeah, as any business owner, you have shareholders. I do understand that, I would say, return, financial logic, taxes and everything, but they will have to lower the expectations and work more, I would say, on the social/professional surroundings. If you want return, it's better to think about this return on the long run. And the only way saying, okay, why would I spend this much to protect my environment? Because you are required to first, and I believe that governments will put some regulation on the table to make sure that everybody will follow, because the system does not want to pay the bill all the time. They want corporations, businesses to participate by themselves to their own salvation or their own solutions. So the only way to not to force them, to make them understand that, like, listen, you have to learn from that pandemic. It will repeat itself if we're not careful. And again, you just have to present, like, the last 20 years, each 5 years, we did have something. So it's a survival thing. I mean, they can no longer negate it, because when the government of Canada has put like around 300 billion on the table, I don't think they will just let corporate world decide whatever they think. It's a wake-up call. It's not a pleasant one for corporations, but I think they will have to understand that making a dollar, maybe they will have to now be more used to making 50 cents, 60 cents a dollar instead of 1 to 1, my understanding. Many money has to be invested in the people and in the society and in the risk management, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I found it kind of interesting. I'm not going to name companies, but it was interesting for me to see the number of organizations that had inventoried N95 masks prior to the pandemic. And when the pandemic struck and we had, the health, authorities were looking for N95s around the world, we've seen releases of corporate inventory of N95 masks being opened up to the health authorities, coming from inventory that these companies had for their own use. So, I think, I'm trying to figure out, what is it that these companies did in terms of their own pandemic preparation strategies? Was it a result of SARS? Was it a result of H1N1? What is it that drove these companies to even think about the need for stockpiling N95s?
John, my understanding is like it could be just the people, the culture of the people that are very, very careful, maybe that they have been exposed or seen other pandemics. People maybe that like have toured the world and they have seen situation in other places, like the last, like whether the H1N1 or the SARS or the Ebola, they have learned, so they know that these things are more real than they seem. So they're not on the TV; they're really real things. So they may have imported some knowledge, some expertise from these regions, from these places. It's just people. I think just the management, the people that have they have that concern and they have seen it. Maybe they have been personally exposed and seen, and they believe. That's why I said, like in one of my slides, you have to believe it will happen to be able to manage it. And it's that your corporate social responsibility. It's not like, would I prepare myself just in case for me? What about the others? Maybe you will be able to help the others. So you may just like, not just you. So that corporate social responsibility will be, I think in the future will be more enforced than we think, okay? And we have to be like that. I mean, our system cannot survive if we don't, each one of us do its small part, okay? I'm not saying that everybody should buy these masks, but it could be a requirement in some way for certain pandemic situations to make sure that all companies, it's like having a fire extinguisher in most of the companies, the sprinklers, alarm systems, and so on. So this pandemic risk, assessment, I think will come in the coming months as maybe a minimum requirement or a strong suggestions from regulators. Okay.
Yeah, and I have one last question from my perspective, in terms of looking at the general economic landscape and companies out there. Not every company is going to survive. Not every company is going to come back. So what's your ideas in terms of what does a post-COVID-19 pandemic economic environment landscape look like?
Well, for many businesses, I think it's going to be tough times. It's time to think about like pivoting. Is my infrastructure can do something else? When I say, can I have other same structure, different products? It's the assessment time. I mean, knowing that business needs to know that they're not all going to survive because of many things. Demand has shifted. Many things has shifted. We can look at the auto industry. People have learned that maybe taking more the cars, less the cars. So many things will shift. The packaging industry, for example, could be all the physical contact maybe industry would be maybe the restaurants, the hotel, the transportations. They will have to think. Unfortunately, we have to be aware that many businesses will disappear unless they are aware that they need to shift, they need to change, they need to adapt. And I'm sure that most of our businesses in Canada or Quebec can think about something else. If they have been creative in COVID-19, they can be creative after it, my understanding. And I have seen a lot of success stories on many things that are very, very, very sharp because they innovated by necessity. So my advice, please continue to do so. And we have so many options in the business, that things that we never thought about. Could be artificial intelligence, could be digital networking, could be many things. But the solution is like within the businesses, do an assessment, and because more likely, unfortunately, the banks will pull the plug because they won't be supporting industries that are not generating revenue, which is a logical financial issue.
Thank you. All right. I don't know if there's any other questions. I'm just going to open it up one more time to questions from the participants to see if they have any other thoughts about risk management and pandemics, and how do you in fact organize yourself around, survival in a pandemic world. While everybody's thinking about questions, I'm going to give you my last question. Is probably, the pandemic risk management is easier said than done.
Yeah.
Right. It's, we can talk about it. We can do all kinds of ideas about models and about structures and everything else. So what's your practical advice?
Well, conceptually, it's really easy, like for you and me, like from our standing where we work, we collaborate in the university background, expertise, subject matter expert, it's easier said than done. The issue, like what for our attendees and their, our audience, is just to raise your awareness that the risk management does exist. it can help. It may not has the name of enterprise risk management or business continuity plan in your head, but you still can do it in a way to protect your business. To do it, like I said, it's like the 3 best response strategy that I put in my slide that you can see. I have same product, I need to find different channels. I have the same infrastructure, I need to find different products. I have my products and services, I have to find different infrastructure. So the idea is I need a plan, I need an infrastructure that will allow me in a crisis mode. I have to perform under pressure. I don't have access to my clients. I don't have access to my suppliers. I don't have to manage anything, but I have to manage to get through all these difficulties or constraints that the pandemic would impose to still get my business running. For example, instead of delivering in 2 days, I will deliver in 5 days. Instead of delivering 10 products, I will deliver 5, and so on. So when we talk about it, it's just like to give you a broad options. But again, different industry, different activities, we can still have more on a micro level with the specific, diagnosis or, intervention. But like broadly said, it's more awareness, it's a culture. How do I make sure that I still maintain the business within that 3 axes, okay? Product, channels, infrastructure, like John said before. So that's your 3 things: your product, your service, your distribution channels, your infrastructure. So we said about the infrastructure that you can move from brick and mortar to digital. We said about your products, you need maybe to pivoting from one product to the other, like again, from Post-it to masks. You need to think about different channels. It could be just like local distribution versus global distribution and so on. There's many things, but like the idea is you have to think about your business as something important. You can scale the risk management to your own company with very reasonable and smart thinking. You can do it.
Great. Ms. O, thank you very much for your time today. Very enlightening. And I think that everybody learned a lot from your presentation in terms of, what are some of the practical processes that we should be looking at when it comes to risk management. So thank you very much. I'd like to thank all the participants to make sure that they enjoyed their session this afternoon, and to let you know that we'll have a recording of the session available to you within the next 24 hours. You'll be getting an email letting you know about the availability of that recording. So once again, thank you for participating. Thank you, Ms. Hout, for your presentation. And we look forward to our next session brought to you by the School of Continuing Studies at McGill University. Everybody have a safe day. Thanks you very much.
Thanks a lot, John. It's just like, again, if the audience and the attendees, whether after the recording or not, if they have any needs, any other ideas that they want us to present, we're more glad, the School of Continuing Studies, that to present whatever subjects that they would like to, whether in my expertise area or other colleagues like you, Ria, would be very glad. And we're here to share and to give as much literacy as possible to our community.
We'll share Ms. Hout's email address. Make sure everybody knows that if they have any specific questions that Ms. Hout can ask or can answer specifically to your request, we'll make sure it gets to him directly. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Everybody. Thank you. And, take care. Be safe. Okay.
Thank you.
It's going to be finished too. Okay. Thank you.